This is the 21.5 Show.
You're on 121.5, the emergency frequency.
Whether you're a professional pilot or want to be one, you're in the right place.
Let's get started.
Join professional aviators Dylan and Max as they talk their experience in the airlines, business aviation, and more.
Life is good.
Industry experts, unique stories, and plenty of fun. This is the 21.5 Show.
Here we go.
What's up, guys? We're back for the 21.5 Show. We're here. I'm in Bellingham, Washington, coming live from the 4 Point Sheraton. We're doing another episode. We're doing it live. Smash that like button. Make sure you subscribe. That's my best idiot YouTuber.
Guys, we have an absolute banger. The reason I made you do that is my 8-year-old just had his birthday yesterday. His dream is to be a YouTuber someday, and his entire birthday party theme was YouTube. The cake had a YouTube link thing on it. That's his favorite thing.
Do you remember when it used to be like fighter jets or a fireman or
policeman,
a cop or something?
Now they just walk around. What is up, guys? Guys, we have an absolute banger of a show for you today.
He doesn't say that, does he?
Yes, he does. We do have an absolute banger of a show for you today, though, folks. Thanks for tuning in. It is the 21.5 Show.
We got James Onieal back. He's throwing down some knowledge, as usual, wearing a turtleneck, doing what he does.
A tactical garment, the show for professional pilots. Welcome. My name is Dylan. I am a professional pilot representing in this corner, business aviation.
What's up, guys? My name's Max. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm in the airlines. I'm in business aviation. I'm in general aviation. I'm thinking about getting into hang gliders. Who knows what's going to happen?
No powered parachute. That's the one. We need to
That's
call.
what I really want to do.
We should call Joel. It's been a while. We should call Joel and check in and see if he's gotten his powered parachute back out.
What do you mean, Joel? Joel that abandoned us like this? Left us out in the cold? Like dogs? Like Siberian huskies?
Powered parachute. That takes a lot of time. A lot of maintenance. Well, we've got a great show for you today. Max, I don't know. We're getting conflicting signs. Things might be slowing down in the cargo world. Hearing some rumors about some hiring targets being changed for some of the major airlines going down. But then we see news of FlexJet with a big new pay package. Rumors I have seen from multiple sources saying that they're going to start first year pay at $175, but they're upping their minimums a little bit. So I don't know. James is going to come on and dispel some myths and talk about what he's seeing in the industry. So that'll be in the main portion of the show. We've got Mailbag, and we skipped flight advice last episode, so we're gonna have to do 2 this time. Are you up for that?
Let's do it.
Unless you have anything interesting to say or any more YouTube.
Were you surprised when you woke up and got that video I just sent you?
I was surprised, and then
my wife drive me to work at pre 5 a.m.
I like that you go, oh my wife and team player and this all that, and then you zoom in on your dog Crunch, and you're like, here's my aviation dog Crunch. And I was like, what does that mean? Well,
it means he's a lazy.
Right. Well, while you were busy moving people all over the country during the holiday season, we were doing our first taste of control line flying with my dad, who was in town.
Oh, my God. The best part about when you talk to your dad, he's like, no, you don't get dizzy. You could actually fly figure it. And then you see him out there
spinning around, and he had to
ripping
stop.
around in circles.
Because he got
I'm
too
like,
dizzy.
He's going to puke.
He's like, stop, I'm too dizzy. And I'm like, yeah, Dad. So
that was so aggressive.
No, I know. We posted a reel on our Instagram. So if you're not following,
hopefully you caught that.
Go check it out. It's pretty funny. And he's just spinning around. Looks like he's going to drill a hole in the ground. Oh, it's the best. I did it like 2 times. It's like, I think I'm good on this one. We'll stick to the RT.
So, breaking news: control line flying. Not all it's lived up to. Huh? Is that what you're saying, John?
You still have to spin.
Official?
No, breaking news: you still have to spin in control line flying. That's what we discovered.
Well, imagine that. What if you sat like on like a Lazy Susan type device? Would it pull you around in circles?
Well, that was the whole problem. What I did learn about controlling flying is you really have to have that pulling force outwards. Like, you remember how we said the rudder has to be like fixed to like always be flying out.
Yeah.
If you don't have a lot, then you get the wind causes slack in the line, and there's a huge problem.
You mean that you lose all the control in the line of control?
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if that would work. If you had enough pull, it would work. If you're basically just sat on an office chair and just, I don't know. I'll have to try that next time.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. You'd have to have a little more juice, though.
pull you around.
Exactly. Yeah. Pulling force. So
I can't believe you made me imitate my nemesis in life is these YouTube dudes.
these YouTube's
that are
good. Guys, hot new merch drop.
Guys, we're playing some video games on YouTube and recording it so your kids can watch and piss you off all day long. This is great. Next up is my little brother's review of some crappy Lego set that has 10 million views.
What do you do if you're
And
a
then
parent?
up next, Mr. Beast has a new episode where he buries himself and
Yeah.
spends $10 million.
No, we did that today. We watched the new Mr. Beast episode, me and my sons, where he locked two strangers. It was a storage container type building. It's a little bit bigger than that. And told them he'd give them $500,000 if they lived in it for 100 days.
See, and here's the thing. Mr. Beast is actually a genius. And I hate to admit it, but I
100%.
listened to him on Lex Friedman and I liked him.
Yep.
But the problem is he's such a douche. Like him and all of his buddies, I cannot handle those guys. They're the worst. They're the biggest geeks on the planet. If you took his ideas and the money he puts behind it with some people that were actually decent, it would be so cool. But those guys are the worst.
Well, here's my question. What do you do if you're a parent and your kid becomes one of these YouTuber stars and he's making like 50 grand a month on like these crappy videos playing Minecraft and people are tuning? Like, what do you do if you're just sitting there and it's like, well, I guess.
Well, I mean, what are you
just
going to
roll
do?
with it.
You say, oh, listen, hey,
Call Tim Pope,
whatever
I guess.
works. But I mean, it's just like, yeah.
That'd be great. All right. Well, let's get back to aviation. Let's set this aside, Max. Hey, good news. No more 3-star reviews. We do have a couple of new reviews, however, both 5-star. The first one said Casey Holland. He says, love the show, but training is like prison? ? Gents, love the show. Keep it up. But also keep the perspective. I'm a 20-plus year military pilot. Your initial training periods are not like prison, maybe more like an extended stay with the in-laws. There's some good times in there, but for the most part, you are just annoyed and want to return to your normal. Okay, I agree.
We need to clarify
this. I
this.
need to clarify the quote. The quote was not from a professional pilot. The quote was from an owner of an airplane who also was a private pilot that wanted to go to training, and we told him how long it was. And we were like, yeah, it's 3 weeks to go get your type rating on the beach jet. He goes, 3 weeks? It's like going to prison. That's who's
That
complaining.
guy's going to end up in prison too. That's the funny part.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole different podcast. But no, it's not like going to prison. You just heard Max's experience a couple episodes ago.
Yeah, it was fun. It's just like anything else. Any trip is what you make of it.
Or getting locked in a storage container for $500,000 for 100 days from Mr. Beast.
What it comes down to is your attitude,
That's right.
which is a big part in this job, especially as an airline pilot.
100%. All right. Next review.
Jeez. Just moving along. Why don't you? A review. This is a show I listen to. Not a waste of too much time. But seriously, great show. Lots of laughs on my commute, and even some inspiration to be a better pilot.
Oh, you're welcome. This is a show I listen
Lame.
to.
And the best part is, you know who left this? Lame for an astronaut.
It's a good screen name.
It sounds like someone I want to have a beer with.
I like it. Lame. Let us know when you come to Phoenix. The first hazy
Yeah.
IPA's on us.
But seriously, let us know.
Seriously, these guys don't suck. I love it. If you want to write a funny or interesting review for the 21.5 podcast, we'll be happy to read it, and then we'll send you some stickers afterwards. And if you've written us a review recently, shoot us an email with your mailing address, and we'll get those out to you. Thanks to everyone who rates and reviews. Rate, review, subscribe.
Smash that like button.
Smash that like button.
So I got a good one for you. So
Okay.
2 nights ago, my buddy Steve, he's actually a retired Southwest guy who I didn't know from Southwest at all. I met him at the airport, general aviation stuff. He's 68 years old, right? And he got a job and he's been flying charter, in retirement, 7 on, 7 off deal out of Scottsdale on the Phenom, doing the whole thing. And now he's got a dude who bought his first airplane and wants Steve to run his operation, right?
Okay.
So he's like, hey, can you help me and get this started and teach me and I'll pay you and it's no problem and blah, blah. And I'm like, that's not necessary. Just come over to my house and we'll talk. Steve's done a lot for me. He's a good dude.
Yeah.
So we sit down and we have airplane management 101 with a 68-year-old retired airline pilot. I'm like, all right, Steve, get out your notepad. So here's what we're going to do. You have to figure out this. You have to get LOAs. You have to figure out who the maintenance management is. and you have to figure out how that's going to work. And then you get set up with Airplane Manager, and you have to syndicate that with FlightBridge and get all that.
Yeah, right. Oh,
Like,
geez.
I mean,
You
you're
were
in this
deep.
whole spiel.
Holy cow.
Well, I'm just like, look, and I show them like on Airplane Manager. I'm like, hey, here's a 45-minute tutorial. I'm not going to teach you how to use it.
Yeah.
This is the tool. Sign up here. Learn how to use it. Here's FlightBridge. Here's what this does for you. Learn how to use it. Do this, that. And he was in the military before the airline, so he's like the perfect guy. But that being said, he's been flying charter. He's been flying phenoms. He's been doing flight planning. He's been doing weight and balance and performance and this and that. And it's hilarious. He's like, yeah, well, first we go to this app to do the performance, and then we go to this app for the weight and balance. Then we go to this app to file the flight plan. And we go to, I'm like, oh my God, really? This is what you. So I'm trying to impress upon him the importance of using these tools that all work together, right? And like, we'll go to ForeFlight. And if you do in a ForeFlight, you can get the performance, you can file your flight plans, you can do the weight and balance, you can do the whole thing right there, right? So it's interesting to kind of use all of the stuff I've learned over a lot of years and a lot of trial and error and trying to figure stuff out, and get Steve, who's in this stage of his career that's very different, and get him launched on running his own flight department. One airplane, not a super complex deal. But,
Yeah.
But it's cool because I'm like, listen, I try to impress upon him. I'm like, look, Steve, you have a blank slate here. Okay?
Yeah, right.
And this owner's relatively young. I'm like, look, this is the best thing. If you can figure out how to use these tools now, it's going to make everybody's life so much easier. And I'm trying to like, look, you can give him a login. He doesn't even have to call you or text you or anything. He just enters a trip request in here, and it will show up on your screen. And then you manipulate that to do what makes sense. And it'll be cool. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. And we're both talking like we're old pros at Airplane Manager. We found it after 15 years of doing manually with
we're
Excel.
Well, that's the thing. We can save everyone else from being as big idiots as we are.
Oh, wow. We're going to do all this.
Oh, you're kidding me.
Dude, my last job, we had a Microsoft Excel file saved on a company shared drive that one guy would go update. It wasn't even a shared calendar that like connected to your like regular. It was an Excel file, and then you go, well, I guess go download the latest version of the Excel file to see what the calendar. Oh my gosh, we're not paid by any of the people you mentioned either. None of them.
Yeah, we'll get
that out. All right, Mailbag is next, Max, which is of course brought to you by our friends from the Advanced Aircrew Academy, aircrewacademy.com. You know they have all of the training programs that you need for your corporate flight operation. Here's one that I need, CPDLC. We've talked about this.
Do you even have that?
We do.
On that
and
Challenger?
We were in. So here's what I want to talk about. They wrote in their newsletter, you've kind of seen that the trial period is ending for CPDLC. Have you seen this recently for business aviation aircraft?
Yeah. And then there was like kind of this, hey, that was fun.
Yeah. That's the time to go. So now it's game time.
Good work, everybody.
Yeah. So if you need a quick refresher, aircrewacademy.com, check out their CPDLC course. You can get all of the information. More aircraft are going to be getting that. Have the G280, have you gotten one yet? The alert? We get like a ICAS message and like the noise beep boop when we get a CPDLC message.
Yeah. That says you received a message. And then
It's a little too loud in the Challenger. It's just, and there's no way to dial it down.
What else is
it's
new
like
with that Challenger?
Super aggressive noise. It is nice if you're doing a contract trip in an airplane you don't know the tail number of. However, I found it's kind of nice. Oh, guess that's for us. Anyways, it's new. It's coming. Go visit aircrewacademy.com to make sure you are prepared to send text messages.
And now let's dive in. Yes. Hi, guys. There's a potentially dumb question. What does Tim Pope or companies like this do that Fidelity or Schwab or whoever's managing your 401k through the company not do? Got a potentially large retro trip coming and wondering what to do with it. I've got no debt other than a mortgage. I'm not a toys guy, so I'd probably just pay off some of the kids' college or pay off the house. Just wondering what your thoughts are, Mike. Well, I think you answered your own question, because what do they do? But I might just pay off some debt, or I might pay off the kids' college or pay off the house. But clearly you don't know which one is the right course of action. It's not about necessarily investing your money, all of it. It's about having a plan and saying, okay, if you have a chunk of money, what's the best use of that? Is it better to invest it here? Is it better to pay off this debt at this rate? Is it better to do this? And that's what good financial planner, of which Tim Pope does. It helps you figure out a plan as to what to do with these sudden liquidity events where you have some cash you're not exactly sure what to do with, or how much money do you invest in a post-tax account versus a pre-tax account, and this and that. And that's more the planning. That's why it's called a financial planner, not an investment manager. It's a whole plan is what they provide.
100%. And we'll see, if you would have kept scrolling down, you would have seen that Tim actually answered the question below.
Oh,
yeah.
Let's see.
It's all
Let's
right
see what
there.
he, let's see what he
It's
had to
very
say.
close to what you said, though. Keys on planning, tax planning.
Oh,
planning on
hi,
gifting.
Dylan. Mac asked a great question. That's the best. Go ahead, Dylan. Break this down for us.
I mean, you're exactly right, Max. For shooting off the hip there without even looking at the answer, that was pretty good. The key word is planner. Like you said, tax planning, giving planning to loved ones.
Pre-tax and Roth contributions.
Come on.
I hit all the
You
the
hit them
high
all.
points.
Estate
What
planning.
else do you want?
There it is. That's right. So that's the difference. And like Max said, the service you get from your 401k at your airline is more of an investment management, right? They're trying to tell you how to balance those funds that you have access to in your specific plan, which is not a bad thing per se, but they're only looking at one tiny part of the picture.
Here's what I would say. Just remember, too, in a managed fund, somebody is also getting paid to manage the fund. And those different funds have different levels of management fees, which is another thing that maybe your financial planner can help you understand. One of the things that we've heard in the past is that, the retirement in 2044 fund, those are some of the highest fees that are available, and because they're taking advantage of people who be like, well, I don't really know what to do, but I know everyone to retire in 2045, so I'll just do this plan. And so those are some of the things too that can hedge. If you're nervous about paying for a financial advisor, I get that. A lot of people are. And I think there's some people that are educated well enough that probably don't need one. But for the average Joe, especially the average airline pilot, paying for that expertise is probably worth it in the long run for the myriad of things that we just discussed. So
100%. Yeah. On your next long leg, go learn about what an expense ratio is and figure out that they're high on those target funds. Hey guys, love the podcast. Been listening for a couple of months now. I'm 36 years old, and my dream since I was young was to be a pilot. I've deferred that dream long enough. I'm starting to look into pilot schools and training programs, and I'm wondering, what are some of the drawbacks to going through an accelerated program a la ATP versus a longer program such as Embry-Riddle? And that's from Ronnie.
All right, Ronnie, I'll tell you what I'm thinking right now. And this may have a little more weight at the end of this episode, but I think that, let's start with this. There's a saying that says you don't know when you've peaked until you're on the backside of the peak, right?
Okay.
Well, my personal opinion is we may have peaked in this business. And if you're at the stage where you're looking for a training program, right? We've got this mindset as of late of get your time, get your training done as quickly as you can. You don't need to mess with a college degree anymore, any of that stuff, right? You just get it done and you can get a job. And I think at some point, based on history, that is going to change. And we may have peaked, we may not have. My personal inkling is that I think maybe we have. Now, that doesn't mean that, furlough's around the corner, simply that we've climbed a really high mountain and then maybe we're just starting to crest the backside of that.
New hires at United getting captain and training. Yeah, that might have been a good signal. That could be a good signal.
The point is, if my kid was at the age where he's like, Dad, I want to be a pilot, and what do I do? I would be a little bit more nervous now about giving advice to not get a college degree and all of that. I would be thinking again about, now, does that mean go to Embry-Riddle and get a degree in aeronautical science? I still don't necessarily think that's the best idea, but things might be changing. And when they do, the requirements go up and things get more competitive, and some of the rules that we've been living by now may not still be in effect in another couple of years. And so to answer the question that's being asked here, what is the difference? Well, the drawbacks between going through an accelerated program like ATP is that you're paying for what you get, which is your certificates and ratings. That's it. While a longer program like Embry-Riddle, you're paying for a college education on top of all of your ratings. And at that, a premium. Now, I think that is kind of two ends of the spectrum is what he's painted, right? Where I think Embry-Riddle is probably the most expensive and probably most in-depth, maybe, aviation education. Very focused on aviation, whereas there's somewhere in the middle too. I mean, I'm flying with a captain right now who bought a Cherokee 180 and taught his son how to fly through commercial. and he's at Mesa now, and hustling to get his time to get his 800 hours of turbine SIC so he could apply to the majors. But there's a million different things in between there. And I think where you fit depends on where the business is, where you think it's going, what kind of funding you have available, and a bunch of other things. So to say that one is right over the other is impossible because it's such an individual decision. But I wouldn't bypass the getting a college degree somewhere along the line and maybe something other than aviation that gives you some diversity. I'm starting to think that might be a good idea again.
Yeah, it's tough. And this emailer said he's 36, so we don't know. They may already have a degree. To echo what Max said right now, if you've already got a degree, probably I would either go through the option one, go through the ATP fast training, try and get your time as quick as you can and instruct, or depending on what resources you have available, might be a good idea to look into buying your own airplane and flying, getting your training that way. Might be a little bit cheaper if you can swing it, if time is of the essence. And I would say time is of the essence, to echo you, Max. Another email. Michael sent in some updates on the layover guides for Orange County, Dallas, New York, and New Orleans. So we're going to update those. Thank you very much, Michael. Much appreciated. And Max, one last email. If you scroll down to the bottom below Tim's email.
What's up, guys? This is his words, not mine. What's up, guys? Just to let y'all know, for your 3 listeners that use Google Podcasts, it's shutting down. It's being replaced by YouTube Music, of course. However, for some reason, 21.5 isn't on there yet. Hold on, let me consult with my technical advisor. Dylan, why are we not on YouTube Music? Please, quickly.
I don't know what YouTube Music is, but I'm going to Google it and we will get on it. I'm going to have my new 8-year-old come in and he's going to consult us. We will work on getting on YouTube Music.
Thank God. Yeah. We need to have a presence on YouTube Music now that Google Podcast is shutting down.
Exactly. Quickly.
I must have missed that in Apple News. That's weird.
If you would like to be featured in the Advanced Aircrew Academy mailbag, you can do it by simply sending an email to info@215podcast.com, and we will happily read your correspondence on the air and attempt to answer it.
What about leaving comments on our YouTube videos? Is that a way we're taking flight advice now?
Flight advice. It's only via comment.
Only if you're a subscriber.
That's right. Have you smashed the notification bell? All right. That is it for the mailbag. On to the main event. Our favorite man in a turtleneck, James Onieal, joins us to talk about the latest in the industry. Should cargo pilots be concerned? Are low-cost carriers slowing down hiring? Let's find out what James has to say. Here we go.
All right, Dylan, we have one of our favorite guests of the listeners, myself, you, sometimes favorite to hate too, James Onieal. Welcome to the show.
Yes, I do have a tactical turtleneck on, so thank you for having me.
we cleared that up in the pre-interview. Yeah. It's funny.
It's perfect.
You must be flying something with shoulder harnesses a lot, something without, very important to protect the neck.
No, man, it's cold out in the Midwest, man. You got to layer. It's all about layering, man.
That's right. See, we're busy in Scottsdale, just sort of now thinking about maybe I should start wearing jeans.
Nah.
I haven't seen sun in 2 months. It's probably gonna be another 5 before I see it again. So solid 42 degrees
okay.
and misty.
Beautiful.
It's okay. Well, I'll tell you what else is misty right now, James. It's some of the eyes of cargo pilots around the globe here. We're starting to see some interesting news come out of some of the big cargo
is this the tip
operators.
Of the iceberg?
What can you tell us about what's going on at FedEx, UPS, and some of the other carriers?
If folks are on our weekly email, they've been seeing stuff come out every Tuesday about how cargo demand is down, right? So that's not a shock. UPS just recently had a major package that went through for their drivers, which is a pretty substantial increase in pay and benefits. They just bought out, it was around the 200 number, pilots that they bought out to retire early. And then FedEx just came out with an offer to their pilots to go join one of the American regionals.
The memes that went along with that were just incredible.
Look, the difficulty with that is who's to say, is that a contract negotiating tactic? How bad is the company position really? It's still early, right? So nobody knows. But what that means is you have a lot of cargo pilots flooding into legacy passenger carriers. And so what we haven't seen yet, what we really won't know for a little while longer, is what does that do to competitive minimums at places like United, Delta, and American? And even if you don't want to go to any of those carriers, United, Delta, American, their hiring flows downhill and it impacts corporate aviation, it impacts the regionals, it impacts the ultra low cost, right? Because if they're not having to pull as many people from those locations, then those companies don't have to backfill. So the interesting thing to watch will be as we progress into 2024 is where does hiring stay at a consistent clip? Where does hiring slow down? Where does hiring stop? And where do competitive minimums raise? We're still in that kind of analysis mode to figure that out.
Are you saying right now that you have clients that are at FedEx or UPS that are now saying, hey, I want to switch? Are they getting that spooked where they're like, I want to get on a Delta or United?
I would definitely say that that's varied right now. There are some folks that are definitively saying, hey, look, they just want to get out of there. And if you're flying 10 or 20 block hours a month sitting in Memphis, that's expensive. You're eating a crash pad on minimum guarantee, not really going anywhere. Other guys are, hey, look, I'm comfortable where I'm at. I'm going to ride it out. You know, they've been through ups and downs in the industry before. They're completely fine with it. So I wouldn't say that there's a definitive theme right now of like, you know, people are definitely in exodus mode, but I've definitely had a lot more conversations about it recently than I have in the past of, you know, guys going, hey, look, should I stay? Should I go? Just starting to debate on whether they want to put stuff out to United, Delta, American, whether they want to kind of ride it through. But it's hard to make an argument for a lot of folks right now to say, hey, look, I want to ride through a really turbulent time when it's going so well at other places. I wouldn't say it's going so well everywhere. You got the merger with JetBlue and Spirit. You have some of the engine problems that folks are facing. But there are places where it's still going really well. I mean, what was it? 90% of the profits in Q3 came from two carriers, United and Delta. It's not quite 2 a.m. there right now. It's still, 9 p.m. It's very hard to look your family in the face and say, hey, listen, I don't know how this is going to go. I don't know if it's going to get worse, if it's going to get better, if it's going to pay out in the long run, but I can go over here where it's accelerating like crazy. I think that makes it tough.
What makes me nervous too is like that I ask myself, I'm like, wow, is this like the canary in the coal mine? Is this the tip of the iceberg here where this is a sign of bigger things or is it not? Because while we all fly big jets, it's a totally different business carrying boxes rather than passengers.
Yeah. So look, there's definitive areas where, I want to be careful on what I say here, right? Because it's still very early on. So we're still talking about, this is more reading tea leaves and trying to get in a vibe of what's going on in the industry. But you can see signs of things slowing down. Not as many invites going out for interviews or class dates being shuffled around or, just things like that. Folks that would normally have gotten a call, now it's taking longer to get a call. Are guys getting calls from the military when they're a year out versus 6 months out, right? There's a lot of those things that you can take a look at and you go, is that just some wonky stuff going on because we're going into the holidays, right?
Yeah.
It's not like November and December are the boomiest hiring periods of the year. It's not like classes are going like crazy through November and December. So I think it would be irresponsible right now to go out and go like, it's definitively, yes, everything crashing and changing and so on and so forth. And there are some other more subtle signs that we're watching, especially going into more, January and February to see, hey, look, is this a short-term thing or is this a broader trend? And I think some of the canaries in the coal mine for that will be taking a look at what happens with Spirit's hiring, what happens with Frontier's hiring. What do places like Frontier do with their cadet programs, right?
Yeah, that's the question, right?
I happen to be at Purdue University, I think it was last week. And some of those guys who are in the flow through Frontier, we're talking about potentially, getting word they may have to wait up to a year to go over there. I haven't been able to independently verify that yet or not. So I don't know if that was just some offhanded remarks they heard from their buddies on the inside or if that was more formally what they were told. But definitely, watching what happens with those cadet programs where they're recruiting straight out of universities, like I said, what happens at JetBlue, Spirit, Frontier, because that's where the international leisure travel is very strong right now. The domestic leisure is taking a little bit of a beating.
Yeah. And I'm always quick to say, we're just waiting for the bottom to fall out of this craziness. But if you look at it in a broad economic scale, the fact that the Fed may be able to engineer a very rare soft landing here after the change in interest rates that we've had, that's going to do good things to bolster this business because when the economy takes a rapid turn, that usually is mirrored pretty closely with the airlines. And so if the Fed is able to change interest rates to slow inflation without falling off a cliff here, and they managed to engineer a soft landing of the economy, which is the way people are saying it looks, I think that's going to be helpful in prolonging the robustness of the airline industry specifically, but everything, corporate everything as a whole, really.
Well, what I think is a little different about this right now is I'm not quite sure, even if something negative happens, that it's going to impact the entire industry equally. Obviously, look, if one of the legacy airlines, if United or American decides to slow down their hiring, or Delta decides to slow down their hiring halfway through the year, that's going to have impacts to corporate hiring and, 135 hiring, fractional hiring, so on and so forth, because not as many people are being pulled up to those legacies. I don't think it would be fair to say this is going to impact Spirit the same way it's going to impact Delta. I think that's where you're going to see, if anything starts to kind of change wonky, there's going to be a bit of a squeeze where the competitive minimums are going to go up versus a complete, shutdown, reversal, furlough, so on and so forth.
That's what's going to be really interesting to see. And Dylan and I were talking about this the other day, is that as the minimums, let's just assume they bottomed, right? Like that they've gotten as low as they're going to go. And then in the foreseeable future, maybe they're going to increase a little bit, just for discussion's sake, not prophesizing anything here. But if that happens, and now you have higher times being required, which gives you generally older applicants, right? I mean, that's what history has shown. So now you have this big group of people in the bottom third somewhere of a seniority list that are in their early 20s that got hired when minimums were super low. And then all of a sudden it starts to ratchet up. So now you're hiring people, say it gets back to where you're hiring people ultimately like an average age of 35 to 40, right? To have competitive minimums. And now you have this group of people that are in the seniority list that have 40-year careers ahead of them. That's going to be very weird as a thing, because they're in line behind people that are going to outlive their retirement, that are senior to them. But also, do you ever talk to people, like maybe people that are coming out of the military that are probably average, older than civilian pilots applying to the major airlines right now? Do you have some sort of metric where you can look at how many 20-somethings were hired at certain airlines? They're like, hey, these guys are going to be senior to you and you will retire before they will. So you will never go past them.
So the difficulty is there's some leading indicators that we'll see. So the first is, what happens to rotary transition pilots? Do they now all of a sudden have to go to a regional airline? How much are regional airlines paying to bring them on? Are they going to be able to still go to a Frontier, Spirit, so on and so forth? So they'll get impacted. The second is, and I know this is a favorite topic that all three of us love talking about, is regional flow-through programs. Look, it has been brutal for the past 2 years with the regionals trying to get captains. And so if hiring does any type of slowdown, or all of a sudden those captains going to get stuck in the left seat because they need the time to season the first officers to get them ready to replace, right? If you're a military pilot coming out of the military and you've done 10 years, so you're 31, 32 years old, depending on when you're doing your terminal leave, and you're a fixed wing pilot, it's a great spot for you, right? Because the airlines could take as many of you as will take the job, because it's one training slot to hire you. Every regional airline pilot that a major airline, that a legacy airline takes, they got to train the regional pilot at United, Delta, American. Then they got to upgrade a first officer to train them to become a captain. Then they got to hire a new person off the street to replace the FO. 3 training slots for every one regional pilot you bring up to the legacy. You take one military pilot and bring him to a legacy, that was one training slot. You take one Frontier, Spirit, or Southwest pilot and bring him up to United, Delta, American, that's one training slot. You take one NetJets pilot, FlexJet pilot, Part 91 pilot, it's one training slot. So, there's been a lot of people that have been jumping out of regionals and doing what's called washing their resume by going to a Frontier or a Spirit or a Southwest. And they've been going in there with the mentality of, hey, I'm going to hang out here for 6 to 18 months, and then I'm going to go hop over to a legacy. And that has been happening. But if all of a sudden one of the 3 legacies, any one of them goes, yeah, we're just going to pull back a little bit. Well, then all of a sudden, those Frontier, Southwest, Spirit interviews become significantly more difficult. They may jump through those people that are qualified to go straight to a major and grab people that are still relatively inexperienced, because a place like a Frontier or a Spirit knows if we can keep you here for 3 years, the probability of you quitting goes down.
It's also very expensive to train and then lose people.
It is. And when
just like it is on the other side.
When you got 50% of the people quitting in the middle of indoc, right, or not even making it through training, right, that's a lot of money. But if they hire a guy that's got, 500 or 1,000 hours of 121 PIC time, and you bring him over because they want to go fly an Airbus, well, they can kind of take a look at the writing on the wall and go, okay, well, as soon as United, Delta, American picks up, if I think you're going to quit, why am I going to bring you here? The interviewing gets a lot harder. The applications have to be a lot better put together. The networking has to be a lot more thoughtful. And it's been kind of amazing to watch, when we went into coronavirus, everybody was oh my God, if I could just get a flying job, or just I really hope I don't lose my flying job. And like the second coronavirus reversed course, everybody was like, F it, I want to go straight to a 777. And so if it reverses, it's going to be a very uncomfortable reversal because people aren't used to it mentally. It's the idea of like, well, I don't want to delay getting into wide bodies. When I see people that literally graduated college and 4 years later, after graduating, are at a legacy airline, that's a very unique thing to happen. When you see United put out a bid for 737 captains in initial training, that's a very unique thing to see. Now, those guys are not realistically going to make captain until I think it's August of 24 because all the contract provisions have to go through. But they've set a precedent that says, okay, come August, we can effectively bring you in. You could bid captain in initial and effectively be a direct entry captain at a legacy airline. But if hiring slows down anywhere, then guess what? The competitive minimums to get into those top tier jobs just become that much harder.
I feel like a small change in hiring or something is going to be magnified at the applicant level, right? Like a small change at the airline level is going to be exponentially magnified at the very bottom of where they're feeding it. So
Yeah. So, I mean, we haven't seen that yet, James, but we have seen, I think it's Frontier, right? They've stopped hiring for whatever reason. What does that tell you?
There's a lot of reasons on why companies make decisions like that, right? You don't know if it's merger related. You don't know if it's finance related. You don't know if it's class slot related, right? Until you see it happen across multiple carriers. And so right now, that's just that's interesting. Something's changing.
Well, they also stopped flight attendant hiring, and
Yeah.
they basically chalked it up to poor, disappointing third quarter performance.
Yeah.
But, so it may not even be related to pilot specific at all. It may just be a spirit thing. I mean, who knows?
It is, but it's the question becomes, is that short term or is it long term?
Yeah.
Right? It's how long is that going to last? They're clearly seeing a softening demand at the ultra low cost level. We don't know what that's going to look like medium and long term. People can sit down and talk about the student loan debt crisis and all that other stuff, but at the end of the day, right, it's their numbers are softening, and so they're stopping the hiring. That's what's happening. But most folks, at least the younger ones, are not specifically invested in a specific carrier right now. They're looking at progression. And so what becomes scary is when the actual progression timeline does not meet what their expected progression was.
So that question I had before, do you have some sort of metric that you guys can look at to give people advice as far as how many young pilots, or do you have like a demographic of the age range of a certain amount of pilots that have been hired at each carrier? So you can see like, look, you're going to be getting in line behind a long line of people that you will never see retire.
Oh, yes and no. That gets a little wonky when you start taking a look at, does somebody want to do narrow bodies or wide bodies? How quickly do they want to upgrade to captain? How old are they versus how much time do they have left in the business, right? So if you have a military pilot that's leaving at 32 versus 42, those numbers that's going to impact differently. Obviously, right now, folks are asking questions about Delta, about, hey, are they on the backside of that curve? And how old are the people that they hired and so on and so forth.
Do you even have access to that data? Is that a thing that you can get?
It's really hard data to get a hold of because of discrimination policies and so on and so forth. You can kind of indirectly track it. I'm sure the unions have access to that somewhere, but it's not something that I have readily available at my fingertips.
So what do you tell people? Just, hey, don't worry about it. Go where they have a base you want to live?
It's a very personal one-on-one conversation. I was just having a conversation with a guy here about an hour ago, and he happens to be a military guy. And, he's debating when he leaves the military on 3 different states he wants to live in, and they're in 3 completely separate areas of the country. And those have very different dynamics in terms of what carrier is going to be the easiest commute for him. Right? People tend to be more concerned about the quality of life stuff like weekends and holidays and scheduling flexibility. They're willing to give flexibility on what aircraft type they fly to get that. They're even willing to be flexible on how quickly they make captain to get that. But they are concerned on, hey, look, especially if you have young kids, am I going to be able to hold weekends? Am I going to be able to hold holidays? Not even necessarily every weekend or every holiday, but can I hold some weekends and some holidays? So those are typically the dynamic of the conversations that we're having, as opposed to, how long am I going to be a 777 captain, and am I going to retire with X in my bank account? I think kind of everyone accepts right now you're going to be rich when you retire. The difference between 9.8 and 10.2 million in your bank account really doesn't matter. Most people are honestly willing to give up flying international or as a captain if it means that their family gets a certain quality of life that they want. It's so individual. And even when we have these conversations with people where we lay out some of the variables that would apply directly to them, it really fairly consistently goes back to schedule and quality of life over the long term versus specific progression or dollar amounts. That's just my experience.
Let's do a little role playing, James. We know there's a lot of regional pilots out there right now. And let's start with the first officer. Maybe he's got, in that like 2,000 hours. And this is one of the guys, maybe they're thinking I should jump to that low cost carrier, wash my resume and try and make the jump. What's going on right now make them want to accelerate that and focus on as quickly as they can trying to get on at the major? Or would you start to more think about the music could stop here? I really need to be cognizant of where my chair is if it does stop.
Yeah. So look, I've always held this belief of whenever you jump someplace, you got to ask yourself, if I had to stay here, would I be happy doing it? Right. I bought a starter house in 2007. I plan on holding on to that house for 24 months, and then I was going to turn around and sell it. 12 years later, I moved out. You can have all the greatest plans you want in the world, but look, things change that are out of your control that you can't anticipate. So if somebody's flying for a regional and they really like the regional, they really like the base, they like their schedule, they like the quality of life, maybe they're even getting a ton of flying, so they're building flying experience more quickly. They're going to be captain quicker to regional than if I went to a different carrier, whether it's cargo or ultra low cost. And they go, hey, let me go over there and go wash my resume. What happens if you get stuck there for 5 years? You can be okay with that. And if you're going, well, I'm willing to do it if I have to do it for a year or two, but if I have to do it for more than 2, I don't think I want to. You probably should really give serious consideration to not doing that, because you might have to sit there for 3 to 5 years. I'm not saying that would happen. It's just, if the carrier of your choice slows down, if their competitive minimums go up, if you go to the interview and you fail it and then they tell you got to come back in a year, there's any number of things that are out of your control that can go wrong that could set that back a year or two and make that really difficult on you. Southwest's a really good example, man. They're bouncing people out of interviews right now. It's more competitive out there than people realize.
And that's the thing. The advice has always been the same. I think people are just taking it a little bit more seriously now when you see some indicators. When you hear of anybody that says they're stopping hiring, everyone's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. But like I said, the strategy and the advice really hasn't changed. I mean, you have to anticipate music stopping at any time and things changing rapidly that are unforeseen. And so you have to make those considerations like James was saying.
Look, experience has always been what leads the way, right? I'm low time compared to our competitor group, right? So I've got like 8,000 hours, got like, 5,000 hours turbine PIC time. I'll be okay, right? Like if something goes wrong, I'm good. I'll figure something out. And so for the guys that have a lot more experience, right? Higher flight time, more turbine time, more different types of type ratings. They've got leadership experience. They've been a union volunteer. They've been a member of MBAA. It'll be okay. The problem is when you were at the cusp of the competitive minimums to begin with, right? You're getting hired 1,500, 2,000, 2,500 hours total time. You're the first one to get impacted when it slows down. And so it's important to recognize that if you're in that group and it becomes slightly more difficult, you just have to find stuff outside the cockpit to make you more competitive. You got to start taking a look at volunteering on safety committees or training committees or building flight time more quickly or taking the upgrade, whatever it is that you're interested in. You've got to take a look at doing those things outside the cockpit, because we have been in a very weird position and may still be in a very weird position where basically the minimum flight time was all they really needed. But it was like 5 years ago where you needed a PhD to get a call. It's not like, oh my God, this is crazy what's happening right now. Like, stuff's been changing every 6 months since 1903. The name of the game in this business is to have enough diverse experience so that when the music changes tune, when it slows down, when it speeds up, when it stops, when it accelerates like crazy, you can leverage that experience to get to wherever you want to go. But I wouldn't be panicking right now. I wouldn't even be worried. It's just a matter of what in your strategy is going to change. Almost everybody in the industry has been through coronavirus. You're going to be fine. Oh, you got to wait another year? Okay, great. It is what it is. You didn't get to go straight to your number one right off the bat. You had to go to an intermediate to get there. It'll be okay, man. You'll get some experience.
Wow.
No, I don't mean that like, hey, like
I do.
Go screw yourself. But this is still the most amazing time ever to be a pilot. And yes, there are some indications that things may be slowing down, but the music's not.
Don't freak out.
It's not stopping. Right?
Don't freak out.
It's just the DJ's just changing the song right now.
Yeah, it's just putting a little slower track on.
Yeah,
that's all.
exactly.
No big deal. Maybe relax a little bit, Maybe get another cocktail.
Time to slow dance with your partner.
And I don't know if you guys have had this experience or not, but
maybe it's time to ask your mom to dance.
Yeah,
who knows?
That's a little weird. Hands down, when I talk to guys that have been through a couple of different of these cycles, the number one thing that they pop up all the time of regrets is when they did have some downtime is not using that to develop a skill set. Because
like an unpaid internship Dylan took during 2009. We talked about in the last.
Well, look, the thing is, things speed up, things slow down, right? But they recover.
Learn to innovate.
Like I said, it boils down to what do you want to do outside the cockpit? Where do you want to build flight time? What do you want to do? But I would not be panicking right now or freaking out. There's just some weird things going on right now, and it's too early to say that's what that trend means. And if you want proof of that, go back and listen to the coronavirus episodes where we thought this might last for 3 weeks. All right, like it's tune's just changing.
Let's take a quick break from one diamond dog to hear about another diamond dog, which is Timothy P. Pope. When it comes to financial planning, he's got your back so you can focus on the mission ahead. Timothy P. Pope is a certified financial planner helping professional pilots design and execute smart financial planning strategies. From retirement planning and investment management to military transition and tax planning, Tim is your guy. Timothy P. Pope, helping professional pilots make the most out of life.
So what about for your folks that actually did want to go to FedEx or UPS? And now
They ain't
there's
going
a
there right
downturn,
now.
Right.
What about like Atlas and the other cargo carriers? Is there been any change there? Or?
Unless something changed in the past 24 hours, Atlas, Galid, and Omni are hiring. But once again, I don't know if you remember during coronavirus, Atlas is a very competitive place to get hired by. So it goes back to what I was saying earlier. This is what screws people up is they're like, what do you mean it's competitive to get hired there? You're like, well, it's the places become more competitive. That's all it is.
Well, because the reality of the matter is when you slow down and you have a pool of applicants this big and only so many spots, the only way to eliminate people is to raise the requirements. That's just how the ebb and flow works. And if you have more spots than applicants, you drop them as far as you can. And that's just life in any job. That's not just an airline thing. I mean, that's anywhere.
Yeah, or maybe you realize putting somebody straight into a wide-body international jet at 1,500 hours after coming out of a Seminole might not, look, people have had opportunities that have been absolutely insane. And in a lot of areas, those opportunities are going to continue. And in some areas, they're going to pull back, and it's okay. The key is if you're on LinkedIn, start talking to people at the companies you want to go to. Start asking questions about, are they releasing information on what the class dates are? What are their hiring projections? What are you guys getting information from the union-wise? Have you guys been flying as much as you anticipate? Have you been flying more? Have you been flying less? And you'll start to see where things are softening and where things are strengthening, and you just retarget. But it will be okay. It's going to be a little more difficult than completely easy.
A little bit more difficult. We got to write this one as another great James quote. It's going to be a little bit more difficult than completely easy.
Yeah, like
the dog never thought it was going to catch the school bus.
Yeah, I mean, Southwest will be able to get back to some normal hiring where they can, not have to worry about, are you going to show up to class, right? A Delta won't have to worry about somebody quitting an indoc to go to United. Like, nobody's going to die here.
How much do you think that the fact that Southwest is the last one to not have a contract has impacted the quality of applicant that you see that wants to go there?
I'll be honest with you. The biggest issue at Southwest right now for applicants is the switch over to the new application system. It is very difficult to make sure that
really,
because they don't have the order in which things are happening in terms of how much information is collected on the initial set of applications versus the second set of applications is somewhat different. And so you can end up having people that you're bringing in and interviewing that aren't meeting your competitive minimum set, and you don't realize till they get in the door. I think the other thing with Southwest, people don't really truly understand how amazing of a scheduling system they have over there. Like, if anyone from Southwest is listening, I'd get a bullhorn and get on top of as many buildings as I could and talk about what your scheduling flexibility is. I mean, it is the most amazing thing on the face of the earth what you guys are able to do.
Yeah, tell me about it.
I don't think people realize how amazing of an opportunity that is.
The thing is, though, is I don't realize how amazing it is. I mean, I talked to some other people and they're like, oh, yeah, we have more flexibility. But until you've been in both systems, because they're so complex in and of themselves, the scheduling systems of other airlines and bidding and how it works, like even I don't realize how good our vacation and schedule flexibility is. I mean, I know I have Thanksgiving, New Year's, and Christmas off, and I've been there 4.5 years. Is that good? Like, I don't really know.
Okay. Yes, it is.
I'm being serious. Like, I don't.
Think about that, right? That's insane. The fact that you can get an entire schedule 3 days later, completely drop it and pick up a whole completely different schedule, right?
Well, no, that's what I was awarded because specifically there are certain days like Christmas and Thanksgiving you can't trade out of. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, like I said, the airlines give me the ability to plan my work around my life, which that was a huge paradigm shift in all of my previous flying. jobs. Was I always had to try and plan my life.
But you also
around
have
my
the
job,
benefit of
so-
having to go through that experience of not being able to have a life at the expense of your job. Imagine if you graduated college and 2 years later had exactly what you have right now without all that in-between stuff of going to different corporate operators and getting laid off and swapping around and so on and so forth. Like, you wouldn't appreciate it as much.
Yeah, and that is the thing. Without contrast, you can't truly appreciate, which is what I'm saying, at least airline to airline, is that it's hard for me to even truly appreciate it without having the personal experience to contrast against with another airline. I can contrast it against corporate. That's, but
Yeah. And so the other benefit that people are going to have is if they get an opportunity to stay at the carrier that they're at a little bit longer than they anticipated, they'll have a much better idea of what they like and don't like, which means they will make better decisions over where they ultimately want to end up.
assuming you have a choice.
They will. They will have choices. And they may not have the same amount of choices that they had previously. Great example, FedEx and UPS. Those are not on the table right now. Doesn't mean they won't be on the table in 3 months, 6 months, a year, who knows, right? But this isn't a situation where all of the choices are being taken away. It's just changing. And so the opportunity to stay at a place for longer than 10 minutes gives you an opportunity to figure out what you like and don't like, which better informs where you actually want to go. That's why you saw people bouncing around between legacy carriers, because they just wanted to get to one, and then they got there and went, this is what I thought it was. I want to go here now.
And that's the thing. You really don't know till you're there. You're just trying to make the most informed decision you can. And that, again, has not changed. Just because the environment changed, you're still trying to take all of the factors and the opportunities that you have and make the best decision you can based on the available information, and experience you have. So even when things change, they don't really change because the process and the thought is all the same.
Okay. I want to jump back to the role-playing game for a second. I'm in the military. I'm getting ready to punch out. I wanted to go fly for FedEx or UPS. What should I do?
So for a lot of those guys, they've made just the transition off of that concept because they're talking to their buddies and they're asking them what's going on over there. And they're like, okay, hey, I'll just make a pivot. Right now, for a lot of folks coming out of the military, they're trying to do the best they can to make a schedule, quality of life, and pay decision for their family, knowing full well they don't really 100% know what they're jumping into. No different than if you took a corporate pilot and said, hey, you want to go Air Force, Army, Navy, or Marine Corps? Well, flying off boats is cool. Yeah, but it's not Royal Caribbean, man. The food's not exactly the same, right? You're asking someone to make a choice, right? Without really, truly, fully understanding what it's like to jump into that system. So for a lot of them, they're having conversations if they're married with their spouses, or if they're single, they're usually talking to family and friends, and they're trying to figure out, okay, hey, look, how far out do I want to apply? Which for most of them, 12 to 18 months is the right answer. So they have multiple job offers in hand before they leave. And then for the ones that do apply to multiple carriers and get, let's call it 2 job offers, it's figuring out the commute. That's the biggest thing that military pilots struggle to understand, is like driving commute versus living in base versus flying commute. Most of them go, hey, look, I want to live in base. But the problem is, let's say you want to go live in Boston and you want to fly for a legacy carrier and American didn't hire you. What do? Now you're trying to go, do I drive to New York? Do I fly commute? Like, how do I do that, right? Do I live in Connecticut? So a lot of that boils down to figuring out how that commute's going to work. And Max, you may be able to talk about the benefits of living in base versus flying to where you need to go.
I was just going to ask you, are you able to get that point across? Because the best way that I've ever been, I'm like, it is a different job. It's a completely different job. And I tell people too, I would not do this job if I couldn't live in base, because it's totally different.
Yeah. I mean, all you got to do is grab a 3-legged lawn chair, dump some soda on it, have them sit in that, and then put some screaming kids behind them. And that's what commuting is, right? I mean, like, if they go, it's pilotdomiciles.net or pilotdomiciles.com. I can't remember what the name of the website is, but it shows you all the airline bases around the country and what airlines are based where. But there's just certain areas in the country, namely the middle of the country, that if you want to live there, basing's tough, right? And so if you have family in a very specific location, it's called Oklahoma, right, or Arkansas, right, and you want to live near family, the commuting is going to be part of the equation. You're not going to be living in base. And so that gets a little bit difficult. And so what we try and do is talk through, all right, the concept of really you don't want to do anything more than a 1-leg commute. You want to make sure you have enough options so that you're never taking off going opposite the direction of where you need to end up. Right? Like, so I live in Columbus, Ohio. If I want to go to New York, I only want to be flying eastbound. I don't want to be going through Chicago to get there. right? I don't want to go to Dallas to get there. I know for folks that haven't commuted, that doesn't make sense yet. But for anybody that's commuted, they understand that you always want to be generally headed in the direction that you're going in. And ideally, if you can do one leg, even better. But for a lot of it, I find with the military folks, they're already flexible. They've had 10 years of having to get moved around and not having necessarily always the largest say in what that looks like. Their families they've played the game. They understand what it's like to do a PCS move and own a house while you're trying to sell a house and a whole bunch of other things. So at this point, it's a decision. It's really a family decision over what's most comfortable for them. And if you can't get to FedEx or UPS, in general, it's like, that's okay. I'll just go someplace else.
That makes sense. All right, James, while we've got you, let's do some flight advice, shall we? We had listener Colton write in. He says, hey guys, I am a CFII who has ATP requirements. I've been blessed with owning a Cessna 150 and have been successful as a CFI. I've averaged 100 hours a month, and the past 6 months I have done 150-hour flight hours a month. I hope that shows how hard I've worked to be where I am. I'm applying at regionals and haven't heard much. Not sure about this pilot shortage at this point. My goal is to get to the 121 world in the shortest amount of time. I'm engaged to the love of my life and excited to get married next September. I want to be flying the line before that. Do you think that's realistic? And what is your opinion on a 1,500-hour pilot only having flown 172s going straight to a jetliner? I love the podcast. Can't wait for every new episode, blah, blah, blah. And that's sincerely Colt.
So I think there's a couple of things with that. So hands down, over the past, let's call it 18 to 24 months, it's been really hard to get hired by a regional airline because there's not a shortage of first officers. There is a shortage of captains, right? You need effectively 1,000 hours of 121 time. There's other caveats to that, but just to keep it simple, you need 1,000 hours of 121 time to become a regional captain. And so, you hire a first officer. If they're flying 500 hours a year, it takes 2 years to get them there. Now, on top of that, all your captains are getting ripped up and going to Frontier, Spirit, Southwest, United, Delta, American, right? They had to do a bunch of forced upgrades and really stop hiring FOs because they had jets that are sitting on the ground because they don't have captains to pair with them. That backlog is starting to clear out now, and we've seen as of about 30, 60 days ago, the regional airlines have started to pick up their hiring in, but it's still very competitive. Problem is, people are still dealing with that concept of, there's a pilot shortage, so it's really, really easy to get hired. But the reality is your application has to be squared away because that's how that algorithm is going through and figuring out where you rank against everybody else. And there's still a decent size amount of backlog of regional pilots in the system that are applying to FO positions. So the fact that he hasn't gotten a call wouldn't be something that's concerning to me, but it would be something where I would say, hey, look, you need to make sure that application is squared away so that you're being scored accurately, because it is one of the more competitive jobs right now. The other thing to do is to consider, are they interested in just doing a regional, or are they interested in a FlexJet or a NetJets or a Wheels Up or a different carrier like that? The other part of it is widening out the aperture to make sure that they're including more carriers. In terms of the flying the 150 hours a month and so on and so forth, that definitely does show that he's heavily motivated, and that has to be put on the application. That's why, a lot of people forget, but you think about sections in the application like the achievements section. You really have to start thinking about ways that you can document these things that you've done in a way that shows that work ethic without coming across as boastful. Because when you start putting those things in there, those are what we call differentiators. Those make you stand out. Those are the things that recruiters see. Otherwise, you're just a white sheet of paper sitting next to 3,000, 10,000 other sheets of white paper. That's why we've recently moved to filling out the applications for pilots directly instead of them having to do it themselves. Instead of reviewing it, we just do it for them. Because after you see thousands of these, you can start to see what the trends are and what triggers people getting called out. But for him, that's an awesome deal. The fact that he bought the airplane, the fact he's flying 150 hours a month. I mean, more power to you. I don't want to fly that much.
That's aggressive.
But that is something that definitely needs to be highlighted. It needs to be highlighted on the resume. It needs to be highlighted on the application. And if you want help with that, just go to ravencareers.com and we'll talk to you about it.
Hey, James, I have one last question for you. Dylan and I were talking about this the other day. So I feel like there's kind of two different types of pilots. Like there's people that, looked at airplanes when they were kids and they truly love flying. And then there's people that are getting into flying because it pays good and the schedule's pretty good and you don't have to work a lot or whatever, right? More motivations as far as the actual job is concerned with that rather than having a passion for flying. And I think that like before when you had to grind it out at crummier jobs for a lot longer and things, you had to have that passion to make it through. Whereas nowadays that's changed. Do you see that, or is it easy for you seeing a lot of different applicants to identify those different types, or are we totally just sound like old crusty dudes that don't know what we're talking about, or what?
Look, I think inherently people that become pilots, whether they're so first of all, getting into flying for the pay is it's like getting married to have someone clean your house. It's a bad idea. You got into it for the wrong reason. So even in flight training, from the day you decide you want to become a pilot, there's a lot of things you're going to have to overcome. It's just not an easy thing to do. And the training washes out a majority of the people that they got into it just for the fun aspect of it, right? I'm not talking about people that are go get their private to go fly for fun. I'm talking about the people that are going down the professional path, right? That they usually, that's why they don't get past their instrument training usually. So by the time they get through and they've got 300 to 500 hours and they've got a CFI or they got 1,500 hours for an ATP, right? They've put in a lot of time, effort, energy, and money to get there. Pilots like being challenged. And that is what I think has been the hardest aspect of the past 24 months is they've had to choose between being challenged and making a smart financial decision for them and their family. So for us, it was almost a little bit easier because the economy was terrible. You were just taking crappy jobs to get experience left and right, but you only had to think about it from an experience perspective because nobody's going to pay you any money. You didn't have to worry about getting paid money. You didn't have to worry about getting seniority. You just had to get experience. If you put yourself in the place of somebody that's 22, 23, 24, 30 years old right now, it's a lot more difficult of an equation for them because they have to make a decision between getting the experience, seasoning themselves, right? Becoming a better pilot at the expense of seniority, pay, retirement, so on and so forth. So that is why I was saying earlier, when you get these ups and downs, if we get something that turns into a bit of a slowdown, leverage that and make experience decisions. Because speed ups slow down and slow downs speed up, right? The waves come, waves go. But there's going to be a new wave behind the next one. And the thing is, you need to be in the right position with the right experience to ride that wave.
Yeah. They usually come and go faster than you're anticipating too.
Well, because the reality is right now, this just may mean that everyone's lives get easier because certain carriers stop hiring, but there's still enough hiring like crazy that it's just easier to make a decision, right? Maybe people go from getting 3 job offers to only getting 1. Oh my God, I know that's horrible, right? You know, a slowdown that only gave you 1 job opportunity instead of 3 or 4.
God, it's going to put people in therapy.
Exactly.
Like, only wanted by one major carrier.
My point is,
time,
we don't know what this is going to look like yet. And so you can leverage making decisions based on experience instead of experience and money. You can make decisions over, okay, hey, look, you know, when you have less options on the table, it is easier to do a much deeper analysis on each decision you have to find out which one's right for you. To a certain degree, if we get a bit of a slowdown, it's going to make people's lives easier in terms of decision making, not harder. They may have to work harder to get the option, but the decision will be easier. And you may be surprised how many people welcome that.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. All right, sorry. One more question. I promise this is the last one. I'd come across this a couple, I don't know, maybe 3 times, 4 times in all of the captains that I've been flying with at the airline. And I've had it say, their son or daughter, they didn't really have an interest in flying when they were coming up in high school and go into college and were like became an engineer and graduated and then got a job as an engineer. And then after about like 6 months or so or a year, they're like, God, I'm working 40 or 50 hours a week, 5 days a week. And, I'm getting paid this and this is my future prospects. And then they look at what they watched their mom or dad do as they grew up as a professional pilot. And they come back and they're like, so, let's revisit this flying situation about being a pilot. Cause they then, had some contrast, kind of like we're talking
also
before.
known as experience.
Is this something that
makes decision-making easier.
My curiosity really is, do you see that with any sort of regularity, or is that more of a rare kind of thing, or what?
Yeah, no, I mean, I had 3 guys in the past week that we've gotten hired by Delta with the almost exact same story. The difference is they appreciate it. There's a whole slew of pilots, me being one of them, until 2010. Like the first 10 years of my career, I never had to sit behind a desk, so I never understood what that was like. 10 years into my career, I got laid off and had to go take a desk job, and I was like, oh man, that sucks. Like I'm not wired to do a desk job, right? So now you imagine somebody graduates college and they become an engineer where they sit in a room full of cubicles, right? At a much younger age even than me, right? They figured out like, hey man, this isn't for me. So they have a more clear understanding of what's right for them and why they enjoy flying. So there can be a little bit of a deeper sense of appreciation. I don't mean that in terms of better or worse. I just mean they have the experience of doing something they hated.
Yeah.
So now they're like, I really know why I like this, right? It's easier to appreciate. It's kind of like what you said earlier, like, I don't know, I guess I've always had Christmas off. Is that a good thing or not, right? It's not being appreciative doesn't reflect poorly on the person. It just means you may not have had experience to help you see clearly what it is you actually have.
It's kind of like all the girls that I used to date. They always married the next guy they dated after they broke up with me.
That's exactly what
Contrast, right? That's like the great tragedy, I think, of a pilot that goes to college, is a flight instructor, goes to the regional airline, and then goes to the last stop job, right? I think the great tragedy in that is that they don't realize one of the greatest parts about being an airline pilot is the fact that you don't have any extra stuff or people or employees to manage or people that want to call you or email you at night or when you're on your days off and harass you. The fact that when you're done working, you just get to go home and like you're literally like contractually not obligated to answer an email or answer your phone. Like that's one of the greatest parts. And I don't think you can have an appreciation for that unless you've flown the desk or had employees or people that you're responsible for or whatever, which in that scenario to flight instructor to regional to big airline, you really wouldn't have had that exposure. And I think that is one of the things that I owned a business. I had a bunch of employees and that is one of my favorite things about this job is the fact that it's just cut and dry.
But that's why if we get a slowdown, and that's an if, right? Leverage that to go get experiences in other areas of the industry so you have a better idea on what you actually want. Because those opportunities are still going to be there. The opportunities to progress are still going to be there if there is a slowdown, right? Now, if everything keeps accelerating like it is, ops normal. Just keep doing what you're doing. But if the music slows or if the music changes its tune, leverage the opportunity to get some experience so you have a better idea on what you want. Take a look at coronavirus, dude. Yeah. It dropped off a cliff and accelerated right back up just as fast, right? This is not a coronavirus, right? Everybody's been through hopefully what should be the worst thing they're ever going to experience in their career, which means whatever gets thrown at them next is not going to take them out, but leverage the opportunity to get more perspective on different types of experiences so you know what is right for you and is not.
All right. I think that's all the wisdom I can handle.
Yeah.
By the way, this mock turtleneck is a new one. The last one was black. This one is gray. I've upgraded.
It's like a mid turtleneck.
I know. It's half tactical is what it is.
It just affords you maximum flexibility. Yeah. I can appreciate that.
Exactly.
That's right. You could pivot as needed.
Yeah.
We better get some in Christmas turtlenecks in the mail soon. Snacks.
You get me a 21.5 tactical turtleneck. I'll wear it on the road.
Could be good.
It's going to have a tactical turtleneck embroidered on it too.
Your merch is going to explode like crazy. Tactical turtlenecks.
Yeah. Maximum protection for all over-shoulder harnesses.
It'll be funny. And you just spot someone else in the terminal wearing one and just give them a slow nod.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
Max, good to hear from James one last time this year. Seems like 2024 might have some additional questions. I mean, since we had recorded that episode, which was in mid-November, I mean, we had the Alaska and Hawaiian merger announced. We've had the FlexJet stuff come out. It just seems like this landscape is still changing every minute.
Now imagine that. That's weird, isn't it? Who would have saw that coming?
Who would have saw that coming? So
aviation.
I guess that means we'll have to check in again with James in 2024 and see what the latest is. But I always appreciate to hear from him. You can get his contact info in the show notes. All right. We are in debt. We did not do a flight advice last episode, so now we've got to double up. So I hope you're ready. We're just going to fire them off. Boom, boom, rapid fire. We're getting behind.
Go.
You ready?
Quickly.
All right. Well, our first flight advice, which we always offer to all listeners, is to visit harveywatt.com. You know Harvey Watt. They are the leading provider of loss of medical insurance for professional pilots around the globe. Over 70,000 professional pilots. That's like half of everybody with an ATP trusts Harvey Watt to protect them in case they lose that white, awkwardly shaped piece of paper that allows us all to bring home the bacon. You can check out all of the coverages they provide, including life insurance, harveywatt.com. Thanks for your longtime sponsorship of Flight Advice. You want to read the first one?
Sure. Hi, y'all. Appreciate the podcast and all the helpful advice and information you provide. The stats: 24 years young, flight instructor in Dallas, 1,000 total time, 1,500 ATP. Hopefully reaching ATP mins by June. No kids, girlfriend that I know of. Clever. The situation: before Spirit's engine started to implode, they implemented a pathway program through my flight school and others that I was lucky enough to receive a CJO through. Since receiving that conditional offer, Spirit has suspended training, and Class 8s aren't expected to come back until mid to late 2024, not to mention the pending merger with JetBlue that could throw things for a whirl. Should I pursue a 135 gig and wait out the Spirit Class 8, or pursue a regional carrier and keep that Spirit offer in my back pocket? Ultimately looking to fly a wide body for a legacy. Thanks, Cole.
Okay, I'll start. My personal opinion is I would not put a lot of stock in that CJO from Spirit. There's just too much going on there with that merger. Too many question marks. I wouldn't say, oh, this is what I'm going to do. I'm definitely going here. I've got this conditional job offer, so I'm building my life around that. No, I would press ahead, get your time, start building relevant experience. You said you want to fly a wide body for a legacy, so make sure that the steps that you're taking are getting you towards that. If you're instructing right now, which it sounds like you are because you're going to hit your ATP soon, I'd keep doing that and then probably take regional route. And hey, if Spirit calls while you're at the regional, great, because then you can just hop over there. What do they call it? Like the resume cleansing or whatever, to go to the low cost carrier. And then that allows you to make the jump back to the major, which you're saying is your ultimate goal. And that way, if you're at the regional, you're building your time as quick as you can. And if Spirit never calls, no big deal. You're still not hurting yourself. That's my advice in a nutshell.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. The only thing I'll add is, and we've said this a million other times, so I'm going to make it quick, but I think that as you go into your career, when you look back, it's nice to have had some depth to it and done some things that are different.
Yep.
So going to your regional and then going to the major, in my opinion, that's kind of a boring route. If you have the opportunity to go to a 135 where you can fly a lot and do some stuff in business aviation and do something different than, because an airline career, whether it's wide body, narrow body, regional, whatever, is largely very similar. And so to do something a little bit different along the way is nice and gives you some variance and some depth to your career. So I wouldn't necessarily discount that. Now, the other thing, though, you have to pay attention to is the rate at which you will build experience. So make sure if you do that, I think to not put yourself at a disadvantage, just go somewhere where you can fly a lot, especially your age and girlfriend, kids situation.
Yeah. And honestly, one of the other things that I should have mentioned too was NetJets. You can get on, I think, with 1,000 hours right now at NetJets. So that could be the other option. Go to NetJets right now, start flying there. You might be able to make the jump straight to a major from NetJets too. And you're still going to probably fly 600 hours. So should be pretty good. All right. That was rapid fire number one. Anything else to add to that one, Max?
That's it, guys. Let's go to the next one.
Guys, let's jump right into it. What to do? First off, I would like to thank you both for what you do. Very much enjoy the show and look forward to each new episode. I always pick something up of value for sure. I'm always definitely entertained. So I am almost 49 and I have about 16 years left in my career, which has been interrupted several times over the last 15 years. I do not plan to work beyond 65 if they do extend the retirement age to 67. No thanks. Finally landed a pilot job I've always thought would be my dream job, with an airline that has me home every night. Now that I have completed training here, same aircraft type, I have friends at SWA who are trying to get me to apply there, and this new contract coming soon. I ran the numbers and would definitely make approximately 1.5 million more over what remains of my career, all things staying as they are, of course. That was calculated using the proposed new SWA pay scale, screenshot it floating around, and figuring upgrade at SWA in 5 to 7 years. Upgrade at my current airline is about 6 months, and captain paid tops out here around 300 at year 12. As it stands, I live 30 to 40 minutes from base now. At the current airline and at SWA, I would be about 45 minutes from base. Money is not everything to me, and QOL is more important. I have heard that days off at SWA are pretty good, and there is a lot of flexibility in the schedule. Currently have 12 days off where I am, but home every night with the occasional overnight when flying a charter. While money is not most important, I am also thinking about retirement and stability over at least the next 16 years. I have also heard that if you are offered a conditional job offer at Southwest, you have 90 days to accept class state. May be worth it to at least apply, see how things go where I am for a few months, and then decide. By the way, the new SWA contract should be in place as well. What are your thoughts? If only one of us had some expertise to offer on this topic.
Well, you're trying to make a lot of decisions based on things you don't know.
Yes.
And that's essentially the basis, though, of any airline career decision, because you just don't know. Nobody knows what's going to happen. You could run spreadsheets. How do you calculate a furlough in there? How long is that going to be? How do you know if there's going to be a bankruptcy and pullbacks on pay? There's too many variables, dude, in aviation. There just is. And I think that what you have to go off of are some things that are a little bit more tangible. What bases do you think are going to be around? Like, is American Airlines going to be moving out of Dallas and close that as a pilot base? That seems highly unlikely. Certain things like that you can make some better assumptions on than the screenshot of the proposed Southwest pay rates and things like that. Like that's, and it's hard because not that I'm saying he's doing anything dumb, because when you're trying to make a tough decision, dude, you grasp to whatever information is available.
Of course.
No matter how credible it is or whatever. And that's what he's trying to do. But what I would say is grasp onto the tangibles, which it sounds like I'm a big proponent of not commuting and living in base. It sounds like those are pretty side by side. But I'll tell you what, as a pilot who works for Southwest, when I heard that you work 18 days a month, I almost fell out of my chair. That seems like a lot. Even if you're home every night, it's nice to sleep in your own bed. I get it. But it's nice to like wake up in your own bed and not have to go to work too. So what I can tell you is, and this is, again, my personal opinion. It changes based on everybody else. But what I can tell you is that 3-day trips to me are very palatable. Get up, you go to work on Wednesday morning, fly Wednesday, Thursday, you're home Friday afternoon. And there's a lot to be said for sleeping in your own bed every night. But there's also a lot said to be working 2.5 days a week. And so I would take that into consideration. And what those things, to me, that has a lot of value. I like having days when I don't have to work at all. And maybe that sacrifices a couple days a week in my own bed, but that is important to me. If it is important to be in your own bed and have your special pillow and that's the way you sleep, then maybe that has more value to you. But, and again, too, the flexibility, I've been able to live a lifestyle that far exceeds what my seniority would dictate because of the flexibility we have. And by all indications, this contract that comes out is going to improve that even more. Do I know that to be fact? No, because I haven't seen the language of the contract, but from the communication we get about it and everything else. But the last thing I'll say is that you are making a lot of decisions that you don't have to make yet because you do not have a job offer from Southwest Airlines. So I would encourage you to apply and not get too wrapped up in making the decision when there's not a decision to be made, and wait till you have a job offer and then pushes come to shove, see what the environment looks like at that time, and then put your big boy pants on and make the call.
I would also, if you get the job offer, decide then. Don't wait 90 days.
Yeah, exactly. Don't decide whether you're going to go to a job before you've even applied.
But I mean, well, he was saying something, he mentioned in the email, well, once you get the job offer, you have 90 days to accept it, do this.
Well,
just be decisive, make a decision and go. Like, this is the classic pilot situation of like, oh, if I could just find that one last piece of data that's going to help me to,
you know what? I'm going to wait to defuse this bomb for 90 seconds of the 2-minute timer before I figure it out.
It's never going to happen. You're just going to have to make a decision and press forward, and you're never going to find
just
that
remember,
last.
as a pilot, that's what you get paid to do, is to make decisions when push comes to shove, and it's tough. So
be decisive. I think you're in a good spot. I agree with everything Max said. I mean, my only other thing, and you kind of hinted at it too, is like, what city are you in? It sounds like there's a base. I'm assuming you're at Allegiant. It sounds like there's probably a base at both Allegiant and Southwestern in that. If it's Dallas, I'd say, you're probably real rock solid with Southwest. If you're in one of these smaller towns, man, Allegiant, if it's in like an outstation base, I don't know that I would bank on a lot of their smaller domiciles for 16 years. You know what I mean? If I was in Vegas, I mean, this person could also be in Vegas too. That's also highly popular.
Well, that's the other thing. What you're saying is basically that these big airlines with these big bases, even when times are tough, it's difficult to just, you say that. What about St. Louis? And we've seen it happen a million times.
But it's just a probability game,
Yeah, but like you said, on these smaller outstation basing, it's very easy to shut one of those down.
Yeah.
Compared to a big hub or,
Maybe something you could weigh. We're not clear about where you're at exactly, but hopefully that's helpful. Be decisive. I think that's the best advice we can give.
I kind of feel like flight advice is kind of like us being therapists. We're not supposed to tell you the answer.
Mm-hmm.
We're supposed to just give you some perspective and thoughts and maybe something you haven't thought about to then make the decision on your own. Because there's no way enough information isn't provided. It likely can't be provided to really make the decision for you. The advice is, like you said, worth what you pay for it, which isn't much, but we're just a couple idiots that hopefully provide some perspective maybe that you hadn't thought of. That's all.
100%. That is a good way to summarize flight advice. If you'd like some flight advice, a couple things to think about for your big decisions, let us know. You can visit 215podcast.com. There's an anonymous form on the website you can fill out and shoot your quandary to us, and we'll do our best to assist. We're passed along to a diamond dog that can help if needed. All right, Max, that is going to do it. You're flying AMs this week, so you got to go to bed. You probably got an early show tomorrow.
I'm ripping the AMs this week, guys. I got a 4:45 AM van.
Max, will you do a video for us tomorrow when you get ready? Isn't it like a get ready with me video, where you put the camera, like you prop it up against the mirror as you're getting dressed?
Guys, I will not be doing that. There's no way that's going to happen. That just sounds really weird.
Guys, today...
Plus, I don't want everybody to know my skincare routine. It's a secret. It's proprietary.
Man. It's a late night recording, as you can tell.
Yeah, it's a late night.
All right. Well, if you would like to send Max a screenshot of his new contract, feel free to do that. His phone number will be in the show notes.
Any sort of insight on the pay rates, potential work rules, anything would be greatly appreciated. Some sort of disability, who knows?
Any information, feel free to leak it to us.
Listen, I'm just waiting. I'm patient.
Contract will be here when the contract will be here.
I don't worry about things I can't control. That's my mantra in the airline business.
That's right.
It makes going to sleep at night much easier.
Especially when you've got an early show. All right, Max, we will let you get some shut-eye in the Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt Place, wherever you may be.
Sheridan night. Also under the Bonvoy umbrella, Jewel.
Shout out to our friends at Bonvoy. This has been the 215 Show podcast for professional pilots by professional pilots. Many of us titanium or ambassador level at Bonvoy.
Not anymore. I'm a gold elite, bro. I got into the M Club the other day. I was pretty impressed. I was like, whoa.
How?
Whoa. Wow. I haven't seen the M Club in a minute.
Good for you. Did you do the typical airline thing and throw a bunch of food in your flight bag for later in the day?
No, this was on a private trip. I took my mom and my wife to a concert in Louisville. They found this concert they wanted to go to, and it was in Louisville. And I'm like, oh, whatever. And then, so we go, yeah. And they're like, oh, you have access to the M Club. You're a gold elite. I was like, oh, you're kidding. And yeah, I went in there and my wife wouldn't get up to go down there. And she's like, did you bring me back food? I'm like, no, that's not what you do. You don't bring food. You don't have to-go containers in the M Club for a reason. That's because you're not supposed to bring food to go. The coffee is in a to-go cup. I brought you a coffee.
Oh.
But the eggs and bacon, there was no appropriate container, which this is not a thing. You want free food? You get up and at least walk down there. Put a little effort in.
You know what, Max? I stumbled upon something very useful for folks that are no longer in the corporate game. You can pay for diamond status at Hilton.
What?
Yeah.
How much does that cost?
Well, you get it with their premium credit card, which is $400 a year.
Really? Can you make the $400 back?
Yeah, I'm sure they give you
do you
free
get
90.
credits for travel credit or something like that?
You probably can't get all $400 back, but for somebody like you who's not really accumulating, that could be. Because here's the thing, we all know that the status is only important to feed your family on family vacation. That's where you make your money back.
I gave up breakfast a long time ago. Yeah, the status has no meaning to me.
It's the only status is you save the $75 on paying for breakfast for your kids.
Yeah, on breakfast for your rat kids so they can just eat cereal.
Yeah, about 3 nights. Yeah. So, anyways, that's credit card advice.
That's enough of that,
brought
guys.
To you by our friends at Bonvoy. Let's wrap this up. We'll be back we might take a couple weeks off for the holidays, but we will be back in January.
Be skiing.
Yeah. Rate, review, subscribe. Guys, if you want to see a video of Max and I doing a jump at the same time, let's get 200 likes off a ski jump. Let's do it.
Dylan and I will be in the terrain park. We'll be hitting the tabletop. It's going to be insane. We're going to need 200 likes and a supplemental disability insurance policy in place.
A waiver of subrogation from the ski park. All right. Well, until that video drops, remember, flexibility
is the key to air power.
See you, folks.
Respect your bodies.
The statements made in this show are our own opinions and do not reflect, nor were they under any direction from any of our employers.